Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I am told that we start at 9:40 no matter what. So I know that there are people who are still coming in, and that's wonderful. So I'll talk a little bit slowly so that more of them can be in the room to hear the intro. Welcome. I am Lois Mawson, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Board of Elders. More than a year ago, in the wake of the Dobbs decision and awaiting the outcome of the vote on Proposal 3 here in Michigan, we elders engaged in discussion about a faithful response to the issues surrounding reproductive rights. We planned a two-part series, and today is that second part. Last year, the Board of Elders presented resources from various faith perspectives, including from the Episcopal and Presbyterian communities, Sojourners Magazine, the SALT Storytelling website, and a book by Rebecca Todd Peters, Trust Women, A Progressive Christian Argument for Reproductive Justice. We as elders are grateful to serve in a community that engages our faith with issues like these. We seek to be a place where people can bring the challenges of their lives before God's grace and feel loved and respected as a part of a faith community of justice, mercy, and humility. You'll notice that you have an index card nearby. As you have questions today, please note them on a card and pass them to the end of your row. Jane or Larry Schuyler have very graciously volunteered to gather them for the Q&A time after Paula's remarks. This allows us to make the best use of our time today and gives us the option, if we run out of time, to respond in another forum. Now to introduce our speaker. Paula Thornton Greear has worked in both the nonprofit and for-profit worlds over a career in advocacy, communications, and social responsibility. For-profit organizations include names you'll recognize, like Target, Land's End, and Motorola. You'll likely recognize the nonprofit names too: the Chicago Children's Museum, Feeding America, and the Chicago Urban League. She joined the Illinois affiliate of Planned Parenthood in 2017 and assumed the role of president and CEO of Planned Parenthood of Michigan 2 years ago. She reconnected with her roots here in the Mitten. To join Planned Parenthood here, Planned Parenthood has been a trusted healthcare provider for over 100 years. Paula is joined here today by her colleague Jim Norton, and we're very grateful that they're both with us today. Please welcome Paula Thornton Greear.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lois, and thank you to everybody and the Board of Elders for welcoming. I'm thrilled to be with you. As Lois said, my name is Paula Thornton Greear. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood of Michigan. It's not every day that I'm invited to speak at a church, and so I want to offer my heartfelt gratitude for not only your invitation, but for your congregation's public support of reproductive freedom. Access to reproductive health and reproductive health care has become a deeply partisan issue in recent years, with people of faith often painted with a wide brush, as if faith and reproductive freedom are somehow incompatible. So today's gathering is a welcome reminder that reproductive freedom is not a divisive issue. In fact, it's one that a majority of Americans support, and most of them are also people of faith. They are Christian and Muslim and Jewish and Buddhist, and we share a common belief that people should have the right to make a private medical decision for themselves and their families in line with their own values. Today, we're gathered in solidarity and in recognition of these shared beliefs. And I'm so glad to be here with you all in communion, in community. As we dive into this topic together, it seems prudent to start with the question that often leads to conversations around abortion and faith, and that is, when does life begin? And unfortunately, it's a question that I can't answer. I'm sorry if you were hoping for an easy answer on this one. Frankly, none of us can really answer this question definitively, because when life begins, it's not a question of science or objective fact, but one of personal belief and values. If you ask different people when life begins, you're likely to get a whole lot of different answers. Some people believe that life begins when an egg is fertilized. Others believe life begins at later stages of pregnancy. And others believe life begins when a baby takes its first breath. And beliefs can also shift over time. So what feels true today may not feel true next year, or 10 years from now, or 100 years from now. So there's no general consensus. And this question will never have a firm or permanent answer. However, one thing we do all know is that politicians are certainly not the experts. So I encourage you all to let's not get caught up in trying to force agreement on this issue, but instead stay focused on areas where we can find common ground and move forward together. Because what truly, truly matters in the fight for reproductive freedom and justice is that while we support people in practicing their personal faith in ways that suit them, we also stand firm in not allowing others to restrict our rights based on their personal beliefs. Everyone deserves the right to practice a faith, or not, just as they deserve the right to make private medical decisions for themselves and their families without guilt, coercion, or interference from others. And it is that belief that drives the work we do each and every single day at Planned Parenthood of Michigan. At Planned Parenthood, we believe that every person has the right to control their body, their life, and their future. We believe that abortion is health care. And we believe that access to health care, well, that's a human right. Roe v. Wade, let's talk about that. Most of you probably have at least a passing familiarity with Roe v. Wade, but I'll offer just a quick background, just in case. So Roe v. Wade was a Supreme Court case decided in 1973. 70s were a really good decade. Who here thinks that besides that 70s were a really good decade? Okay, I love the 70s. Before Roe, there was no federal protection for abortion, and abortion was illegal in most states. Because of this, abortion was very difficult to access in most of the country, and only the most privileged people were able to travel to states where it was legal. Sound familiar? These disparities left many pregnant people in a difficult place. Find the money and the means to travel out of state for medical care, seek illegal and often unsafe alternatives, or carry a pregnancy to term against their will. As you can imagine, the barriers were highest for people who already faced other hardships, like people living in poverty or abusive situations, people in hard-to-reach rural areas, and people of color who were already coping with brutal systems of racism in so many different areas of their lives. So what changed? Public opinion. Public opinion started to shift on several fronts. The thalidomide scandal of the 1950s, in which pregnant women were given thalidomide as a medication for morning sickness without testing at first. This left thousands of babies born with severe birth defects and saw women seeking abortions in greater numbers. a rubella epidemic a few years later left more moms and babies harmed and dealing with severe disabilities. And the feminist movement. The feminist movement slowly began to grow. In 1965, the Supreme Court issued a decision in Griswold versus Connecticut where they declared that the Constitution implies a right to privacy under the guise of limiting government intrusion in citizens' personal lives. This decision legalized the use of birth control for the first time, though notably only to married couples. It took 7 more years before another Supreme Court decision extended that right to unmarried couples. And then, finally, a year later, in 1973, this precedent that the Constitution supports an individual's right to privacy became the basis for Roe. Once Roe was decided, abortion became legal nationwide for the first time ever. But we know that decision had its limitations. While states were no longer allowed to ban abortion entirely, they were allowed reasonable restrictions, including limits on gestation. We saw the repercussions of this loophole play out over and over again over the next several decades, as some states moved to liberalize their laws on abortion, while others did everything within their power to continue to restrict access within the confines of Roe. Over this period, anti-abortion backlash began to grow as well. And by the 1980s, another good decade in my opinion, the 80s, by the 1980s, with the support of the New Religious Right and Reagan's Republican Party, they had successfully built a national movement that was dedicated not only to eventually overturning Roe, but to putting up as many barriers as possible in the meantime. States put waiting periods in place, requiring patients to attend multiple in-person appointments with days between them. They required doctors to read ideologically driven scripts to patients, and they were full of bold lies, misrepresentations about the risks of abortion, and misinformation about supposed long-term harms. They established unnecessary and burdensome regulatory barriers for both physicians and the health centers in which they worked. They banned federal funding of abortion care, making care harder to access for people who use Medicaid. They forced pregnant people to undergo unnecessary and unwanted ultrasounds, in some cases going so far as to legally require that the clinician, physically point the screen to the patient, even if the patient had asked not to see it. They lobbied for religious exemptions to covering care, including abortion and even birth control, and employer-sponsored health plans, and so much more. By 2022, the year that Roe was finally struck down, states were introducing literally hundreds of new restrictions like these every single year. Many did not pass and become law, but far too many did. Despite this, Roe was still hugely valuable because it continued to afford us a fundamental right to abortion care, even if its protections were not perfect. And when Roe was overturned in June 2022, it took an existing crisis and made it exponentially worse overnight. The Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, the one that struck down Roe v. Wade, was not a surprise to those of us who work in this field. For years, we've been fighting back legal challenges and throwing everything we had at trying to block all these new attempts at restricting care, despite every year breaking the record from the year before with respect to the restrictions. But as hard as we fought in every single state, those who were against us were fighting back just as hard. Here in Michigan, after oral arguments happened at the Supreme Court and it became clear that Roe was going to be gutted, we didn't waste any time at all, because that's the Michigan way. In spring 2022, several months before the Dobbs decision was issued, Planned Parenthood of Michigan and our chief medical operating officer, Dr. Sarah Wallet, both filed a lawsuit against a 1931 law on Michigan's books. 1931. The law is what we call a trigger law, and many states have them in place. If Roe were overturned and federal protections for abortion were removed, these laws would become triggered, and abortion bans would immediately or very quickly go into effect at the state level. And we weren't going to let that happen. Thankfully, our lawsuits and a separate lawsuit preemptively filed by Governor Whitmer were successful in blocking Michigan's trigger law from going into effect. So when the Dobbs decision came down on June 24th, abortion remained legal in Michigan and access was uninterrupted. We are so proud to say that Planned Parenthood of Michigan's doors never closed, and we were able to continue serving everyone who was relying on us for care. Because suddenly, a lot more people were relying on us. When Roe was overturned, most states across the Midwest quickly moved to ban or severely restrict access to abortion, except us and Illinois. And overnight, thousands of people across the region were left without access to care. Overnight, thousands of people had to wake up and wonder what they were going to do. This suddenly left a new reality for many pregnant people who were put in a very difficult place. Find the money and the means to travel out of state for medical care, seek illegal and often unsafe alternatives, or carry a pregnancy to term against their will. Does that sound familiar? This is not a scenario we ever wanted to see again, but it is now our reality. Because nearly 2 years into a world without Roe, 20 states across the U.S. have already severely restricted or outright banned abortion within their borders, forcing thousands of people to flee their communities to access basic health care. In Michigan, we're seeing patients from all over the country, and from as far away as Texas, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Georgia, Florida, Utah, Louisiana, and Arizona. People are traveling so far just to access safe, legal health care. And that, my friends, is a travesty. And like the pre-Roe years, the people being harmed the most are the people who already face unjust and burdensome barriers to care. Black, Latinx, and indigenous folks, people with disabilities, people in rural areas, LGBTQ people, young people, immigrants, and all those having difficulty making ends meet. Not long after Roe fell, we had a patient traveling to us from Ohio. Our team worked with her so she could get to us for care. We bought her a bus ticket, but she ran into some issues at home and missed the bus. She called us upset and panicking, worried she'd missed her chance and we wouldn't help her again. But that's not how we operate. So our patient navigators worked to get her a new ticket on another bus and found her a safe hotel to stay in once she arrived. But on the morning of her appointment, she ran into more barriers when the ride service didn't show up at the hotel. And then the next ride service we called didn't show up at the hotel, and she missed her appointment. So our patient navigators jumped back into action and secured her a second night at the hotel to extend her stay, and we rescheduled her appointment for the following day. And she's lucky, relatively speaking, that she could extend her stay to get the care she needed. Because many, many patients can't afford any extra time off work or away from their families. Accessing health care should not be this hard. Another patient we saw recently couldn't find childcare, so she brought her 8-month baby to her appointment. There was no one at the health center who could care for her baby, so she had to reschedule. She'd already traveled several hours to get to her appointment, and now she'd have to do it again twice in the same week. You see, accessing health care should not be this hard. Alongside these stories of people we have been able to help, there are likely 10 more that didn't even get that far. People who never called us, people who assumed the barriers were insurmountable, people who, even if the trip is paid for by us or a local abortion fund, can't come because they could lose their jobs or because they have other family members to care for. People who are in abusive relationships and can't disappear for 2 days without raising suspicion and risking violence. Again, accessing health care should not be this hard. Here in Michigan, we are fortunate. Abortion access is legal in our state, and thanks to the passage of Proposal 3, we now have some of the strongest legal for abortion access nationwide. Let me say this again. Yes, Michigan now has the strongest legal protections for abortion access nationwide. And it is entirely thanks to the amazing people of this great, great state. When Roe fell, not only did we mobilize, but Michiganders statewide joined us and joined the Reproductive Freedom for All Coalition to make sure that abortion remained legal across the state, no matter what. The coalition knocked on doors statewide, collected record-breaking number of signatures for the petition, and turned out at the polls to definitively vote in favor of amending the state constitution and protecting reproductive freedom for all Michiganders. Across the state, people lined up to vote in favor of Prop 3, some of them staying in line until 2 a.m. to make sure that their voices were heard. And we're so grateful for every single one of them. And thanks to all of this work, Michigan is now a haven state in the Midwest. But despite these significant wins, I'm here to say, and I think everyone in this room knows, this fight is not over. This fight is not over. Because Michigan is still an oasis for abortion care in a sea of hostile states, and the number of out-of-state patients that we see has grown and grown and is poised to grow some more. And despite our overwhelming wins to date, the anti-abortion movement is still targeting us in hopes that they can take back our progress bit by bit. The urgency of this crisis continues to grow, and we need your help. We need your support. We need your voices. Going forward, our focus is now shifting from defending the basic right to provide safe, legal abortion and other essential sexual and reproductive health care to our patients, to scaling up to meet the growing numbers of people crossing state borders to reach us. Planned Parenthood of Michigan relies on our supporters, our advocates, our donors to keep our doors open. So we are asking everyone for their ongoing support for their voice as we continue to navigate these challenges and to rise to meet the needs of all the people who are depending on us. So I've been asked every time I go somewhere, how can you help? And it may sound simple, but I want to say this, and there's a heavy weight on it. It is so critically important. Do you know one thing that you can do is talk about abortion? Be part of the conversation. Abortion is legal in Michigan. Abortion is health care. Abortion is essential. And we must continue to break down the stigma around it. If we allow people to shame us for providing abortion care, for advocating for abortion care, or for getting abortions, we let them control us. Abortion is extremely safe and extremely common. In fact, more than 1 in 4 women will have an abortion in her lifetime. This means that it is probable that someone you know and love has had an abortion. Maybe you have too. We are here to support you, listen to your story, break down the stigmas, because that all holds us back. So I'm so appreciative that you have invited us to. We always welcome your support, your voice. But please stay involved with us and keep that going, because none of us can do the work alone. Volunteer. Give your time. There are so many opportunities to get involved. Whatever your interest and skill sets, whether you want to do advocacy work or escort at a health center, our work and our patients, excuse me. Thank you, Bruce, wherever you are. Our work and our patients depend on people like you, and we'd be glad to have you. I've been doing this work for quite a bit of time now. And I think my colleague would agree. It's not easy, but it's definitely worthwhile. Because every day my job is made easier when I'm given opportunities like this one, when I can come out to the community and connect with people like you, when I can share our stories and in turn hear yours. So I want to thank you again for inviting me to be with you. Thank you to the Board of Elders. Thank you for your steadfast support of reproductive health and reproductive freedom. Our patients need us now more than ever, and as one of the few haven states in the region, Michigan plays a critical role for thousands of people nationwide. I'm really so grateful to meet all of you today and spend some time with you, because together we can build a future for all Michiganders and people nationwide that are counting on us, that at its foundation is bodily autonomy. So thank you again, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, again, if you'd pass your questions to Jane or Larry, we'll answer as many as we can. Thank you, Paula.
Oh, thank you, Lois.
The first question is how the continuing controversy about abortion specifically has affected Planned Parenthood's ability to provide the full range of healthcare services.
That's a great question. Thank you. I think I can unpack that a couple of ways. I mean, the growing controversy around abortion. Let me just say that there should be no controversy around abortion. It is healthcare, right? We have kept our doors open and we continue to move forward. We see the impact that it is having on people that wake up and wonder if, when, where they can get care. And so we're thrilled to be able to do that. It has lit another fire under us. We are undeterred. So you may be familiar with the Reproductive Health Act that was passed at the end of last year that removed a lot of these trigger laws. I'm going to give you an example. So one of the trigger laws that was removed pertained to very medically unnecessary, burdensome things that we had to have in place at a health center. So for example, the size of our hallway, right? The height of our ceilings, these things that did not impact, yes, I agree with whoever just giggled, but the harm that did. So through the Reproductive Health Act, we, with our coalition partners and champions in the legislature, were able to get that removed. So here's the result of that, or one of the results. In Grand Rapids, Michigan, there was a provider that provided procedural abortion care at the Heritage Clinic. Unfortunately, he passed away. Because of the Reproductive Health Act, we're now able to provide procedural abortion in our Grand Rapids Health Center. Because the result would have been people would have had to go from Grand Rapids to Kalamazoo in order to get that care.
That points to one question that I could have highlighted at the beginning, but didn't. People are curious about where Planned Parenthood offers services near us.
We have a health center in Grand Rapids, and we have a health center in Kalamazoo. Are those the two closest? And, may I say, we have a virtual health center, so that even here where we don't have a brick and mortar, you are able to access our care through telehealth.
So there are a couple of questions that relate to our specific situation here in Ottawa County.
Sure.
Jim might be aware that in the last week or 10 days, I lose track of time, the county commissioners passed a resolution, an anti-choice resolution, which is without practical legal effect. Mm-hmm. And one of the arguments that came up during the defunding efforts of the health department was that if the commissioners weren't careful, they'd cut the health department so far they'd offer an opening to Planned Parenthood to come in to offer reproductive family planning specifically. Mm-hmm. Thoughts about the future of Planned Parenthood and reproductive health care in Ottawa County?
Look, we're going to be wherever we're needed, right? And I'm convinced that's in every corner and every nook and cranny of this great state. And while we may not have a brick and mortar and people may be trying to fight that, just remember that we also have our virtual health center. I think that is an example of the opposition continuing to throw just spaghetti noodles at a wall to see what will stick. And another shining example that this is not about healthcare. This is not about the well-being of people. This is about power, right? This is about politics. Planned Parenthood never asked to make abortion care or reproductive health care a political issue at all. We simply want to serve the people that need essential care. This is a shining example of those who are operating on an ideology that steers them completely away from that. It's very selfish and it is very dangerous. But we're going to continue to push forward. So we do that in ways, for example, through our virtual health center, where people can access that care.
I have the microphone, so I can't help but ask this question. Do you know of any other medical procedure for which a physician is required to read a fictional script?
No, I don't. That was a great question. They just make up stuff. They just make up lies.
Well, here's a pivot from that point.
Okay, all right.
So part of the discussion about abortion, one of the lines that is used by people looking to horrify people about the potential is abortion being available right up until birth. With Roe, we had kind of a marker of viability. Do you think that there is common ground between pro-choice advocates and people looking for some kind of definition that eliminates the possibility of abortion until birth?
All right, I want to say this as loudly as I can. There is no abortion up until birth, or as some politicians continuously assert, after birth, which I don't really, so I just want to just say that. The area of commonality is that people should be able to get the health care they need, including an abortion, when they need it, without political interference. And so if that's the place from where we start, right? And move that conversation forward. Not everybody is going to agree, like I talked about earlier on viability, but people should have the right to make the decision about their own health care in consultation with their physician and their family to make a decision about abortion care.
There was a story in the news this past week about a new study on maternal health outcomes, and it reported some improvement in meaning a reduction in maternal mortality among Black women, but that rate is still, by this study, twice what it is for white women. What needs to happen for health equity between white women and people of color, including especially Black women?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that question. This is heart-wrenching. Nobody should have to die because they want to give birth and start their family. This is not a new thing. This has been happening for decades. This disparity is not something that just cropped up and suddenly, Black women were twice as likely to die from childbirth. So we have to talk about it and really understand it. And a couple of weeks ago, the Michigan Senate introduced a package of momnibus bills to help address maternal mortality and decrease the rates of Black maternal death. And so I think that when we're thinking about what we can advocate for, please put that at the top of your list as well. This includes other things as well. We have to be honest and have honest conversations about racism in obstetrics, right? And really unpack that and address that so that we're looking at the root cause so that we can make change. This is something that Dr. Wallet, our Chief Medical Operating Officer, and I have conversations with some frequency about what is our role. For Planned Parenthood of Michigan, it is advocating. It is also building bridges to maternal care. I do not want to be sitting up here 2 years from now and saying that the rate of Black maternal death is the same or that it has increased.
A couple of people have asked what the full range of services is that Planned Parenthood offers.
Oh my gosh, I think I'm going to develop a little song to do this. I don't have it ready. This has just come to me today. So we offer the full range of family planning services. I'm going to ask Jim to jump in here because I know I'm going to miss some. So birth control, STI testing, HIV treatment, PrEP, and PAP. We offer behavioral health. We just started offering behavioral health services. We offer breast cancer screenings. We offer abortion care, of course, procedural and medication. We offer gender-affirming hormone care, which is also available via our virtual health center. Jim, what am I leaving on?
I would throw education.
Oh, education, yes. We offer education. We have wonderful education programs in the communities. And you can find all of this on our site at Planned Parenthood Michigan or ppmi.org.
All right. There was also a question about how can we support Planned Parenthood in Michigan, and I'm going to say that website will be your portal to ways to support Planned Parenthood. Just to
Yeah, I think, thank you for that, and thank you for lifting that up. And I think it is your time, it is your voice, and it is your treasure, right? We need all of this to continue to be able to keep our doors open, to make sure that every Michigander across this great state has access, that every Michigander across this great state is informed, right, with the facts around their health care, that every Michigander has bodily autonomy, and that we're also here for people that are coming from out of states. So we have a couple of different ways to get involved. We have choice events that we hold around the state. Jim, would you like to comment on that?
June 6th.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, we have our spring event June 6th at Meyer Garden in Grand Rapids. And that's a ticketed event that all of the information's on our website. And we'd love to see more people from Holland join us at that event.
We really would. We would love to see you there. And then just this. This is so important. You are taking time out of your day to listen to me, to ask questions, engage in conversation. This is everything. This is where it starts. And so I'm so appreciative. So when you leave here and go look at the tulips, right? And then go back home, have a conversation with somebody you know about something that you learned today or something that you knew but you just feel needs to be reiterated, because the reach one, teach one is real. So if you could just make a commitment to go and have a conversation with one other person and, bring them along to the June 6th event, that'd be great.
one question clarifying, you said 1 in 4 women will have an abortion in their lifetime. That does not include miscarriages, correct?
Correct.
What is the climate like now for the Planned Parenthood clinics? What is the experience of working there? How is the staff doing?
We have the best staff ever, and I'm not just saying that. We truly, truly do. And I'm going to draw from conversations that I've had with our Chief Medical Operating Officer. This is hard. When Roe fell, for example, Sarah, Dr. Wallet, who I spoke about, who filed the lawsuit, made a comment to me that summer. Do you remember this, Jim? It was like, I've been in more meetings with lawyers than I have in patient rooms helping people get the care that they need. So that sort of shows you the temperature. And every day something was thrown. And every day, our providers have to, and people that work in our health centers have to wake up and hear something that is absolutely so inaccurate about abortion and healthcare. And every day they have patients coming in and, needing to help patients get the care they need, or, correct inaccurate information that people have. And so they have a heavy job, but they do it so well, and they show up each and every single day, and that is why our doors have been able to stay open. But it is a very trying, difficult environment. So if you know somebody that works at a Planned Parenthood health center, say thank you.
There are a couple of questions clustered around this as well. I'll try to articulate it clearly. You've already referred to the burden that's placed on Michigan facilities because we are a haven state. Mm-hmm. Are there effects that we should be anticipating and could work against in neighboring states or in Michigan? Is it mostly a capacity building issue? Is it working toward a national reproductive rights initiative? And connected with that, what are the vulnerabilities that we still have even in spite of Proposal 3.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to unpack that a little bit. So I think there are a couple of different lanes. One, yes, there is a capacity issue, right? We are seeing more patients than we were seeing before the fall of Roe because we are a haven state. And so we've had about a third of our patients, there's been about a third increase in the number of patients, particularly coming from out of state. So there is a capacity issue. And you know, we have to have the time and the place and the space and the people in order to provide that care. I think, I have my C3 hat on. So we also have to pay close attention and encourage people to go out and vote. Because though we have the right to reproductive freedom, to abortion care enshrined in our Constitution, let's not close our eyes for a moment and think that that cannot be stripped away if there is a national abortion ban that is put in place. Locally, it's also important that we continue to raise our voice and encourage people to go out and vote for those people that are supportive of reproductive freedom and reproductive health care. We cannot, in Planned Parenthood of Michigan and our sister organization, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Michigan, we do not rest on our laurels. As you noted before, the opposition is going to continue to throw things at the wall until they see that it sticks. They are continue to lift up just bold-faced lies about what this health care is. And if we step back, if we let up for one moment, one or more of those things is going to get through, and one person is going to wake up one morning in Michigan and not think that they have the right to abortion care or gender affirming care or education. And they're going to get lost. And they're not going to reach out for help. They're not going to call because these lies will have seeped in to their environment. So we must keep going and we have to keep pushing forward. We are a haven state, but no state is completely safe from the harm that these politicians are trying to lay upon us.
As part of that service to people beyond the Michigan boundaries, is Planned Parenthood involved in promoting and providing medication abortion by mail?
We do provide Medicaid, why can't I get that out? We do provide medication abortion, but we can only provide medication abortion to those to an address in Michigan.
And the story about the young woman who missed her transportation multiple times, someone is wondering whether that was someone deliberately interfering or just life was uncooperative.
You know, I believe that was just life was uncooperative. And you think about how many times, I almost thought that I was going to be late today because there was just so much traffic. Just so much traffic. And I love our governor and fix the darn roads, I get it. But lanes were shut down, right? And I asked Jim, I hate to be late, so I always tried to get someplace early. But life gets in the way sometimes, right? And think about people who don't have the luxury of being able to call and say, I need to take off work today, right? Or the privilege of being able to say, I'm gonna call an Uber, right, to get me here. And that's $40 and that's fine. I just won't get a Starbucks coffee, for this week. Life gets in the way. And this happens, that's one of so many examples that prevent people from getting the care that they need. And that's why our patient navigator are just so important in helping patients and connecting them to care.
One more question. Last chance to pass them in if you still have them. Someone refers to the basis for the Roe decision having been the 14th Amendment. and wondering if that is a correct understanding and whether that has an effect on the 14th Amendment that could have future influence as well.
Well, okay, I don't know about the future influence, but I'm pretty sure they're trying to find a way, but it is based on that right to privacy, is the foundational element of Roe. And I think, Roe was not perfect, but it was definitely not the ceiling that we need to get to now. It was definitely flawed. It was the floor and not the ceiling. So I believe that, just as I said that people are trying to throw spaghetti noodles at the wall to see whatever happens, they are trying to dissect the foundation of Roe. They're looking at every constitutional angle that they can, wrongly so in my opinion, to find a loophole to get things passed. I mean, if you look at what's happening in states around the country, right? Look at Arizona, look at Florida, look not too far from home, look at Missouri, right? They're trying everything that they can. And what happens, to stand up for this because I'm really serious, what happens is that it makes its way through the system. And eventually, even if it is deemed to have no grounds, think of the number of people that are negatively impacted and don't get care because in that time period, this ideological thinking over here, even though they know, I'm quite convinced that 90% of them know that it's not founded on anything rational, let alone having to do with the law. Think of all the people that get lost. There was a study that came out, and I can't remember the name of the study right now, but it came out last year, and it talked about the number of people that have had to travel to other states to get care. Do you know the study I'm talking about? The Turnabout study. The number of people that had to travel to other states like Michigan to get care. And it was a very high number. But what was more shocking to me than that was last year, that number was about 25, 30,000 people who just couldn't get care. And think about the impact on their lives right now. We are at a critical moment. And my fear is that we become complacent because we are the great state of Michigan. And yes, we are, and nothing will ever take away from that. But as the great state of Michigan, we need to keep standing up like we did when Prop 3 was passed, like we did when the Reproductive Health Act was passed. We need to keep standing up and raising our voices until everyone has full bodily autonomy across this state. And that includes health care, and that includes education, and that includes advocacy. We need to make sure that we are continuing to push forward. Sorry, got a little on my soap opera box there.
That's actually a pretty great note to end on. Paula, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
And I'm going to pass the microphone to Jane, who will share something about upcoming events.
Thank you. That was absolutely awesome. Thank you. So very helpful. Appreciate you being here today and making arrangements, to be here today. Thank you. Next week, Elizabeth is here. Yeah, Elizabeth is here. Next week, Elizabeth Vanderlei will be presenting Malcolm X's Challenges to Martin Luther King Jr.'s Beloved Community. And I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating. Elizabeth has done a lot of study on this, etc. And so I hope you come back next week for that presentation. I will also use this opportunity to say the week after that, Culture Works, and Emily Christensen is here today also. Emily and staff, students will be here on our last session for Adult Ed on May 19th to talk about Culture Works and their work as well. So thank you all very much for today. Remember that there's worship and then there's a congregational meeting after that today. Oh, Jane? Yeah.
And there are two opportunities to put your signature on things out in the hallway. One is for Bread for the World. 3 different things you can sign, going to our senators and to our House of Representative person to pass some bills to combat hunger. The second is a table that has 2 cards on it. We're saying goodbye to our wonderful office staff, Sam and Chandra, and so just a place to sign a card to them, to thank them for their faithful work.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.